welcome back to Empowerment Radio. Now, and I have to say, one of the aspects of the beautiful feminine that you are beautifully representing is that you are speaking in spirals. And as a man, I'm certainly much more like going in the arrow form. So I have to really ask you about this, what I in the break mentioned, this quest for that feminine essence that I believe men and women are no longer in touch with. And in the break, we talked about why. And part of the reason is that we do live in a external focused world, and we live in a very busy world. And especially women have been forced to not only raise kids or be basically women that have 4 or 5 different jobs all at the same time. It's a very competitive and confusing state of being for all of us, but especially also for women. And there is something that just is getting lost. And that what you described in the break is that looking inside and finding there something, all of us, we can find something that is of enormous power. So talk a little bit more about that.
So I'll just tell you about my own personal experience, which might help. So when I started this Heroines quest, I was a professor. Well, I was teaching at King's College London. I was complete academic, and I had everything going for me. Had an overseas research award, everything was paid for, and I was depressed. I was really depressed, and there was no reason for me to be depressed. I just felt disconnected. And I started longing to find the feminine face of the divine, and it wouldn't let me go. And I would tell my different spiritual teachers, my mentor, and they would say, "Oh, God's everything. Why are you so worried about this?" And I was like, because I've developed strength, I've developed brilliancy, I've developed willpower, but there's something I haven't developed. And I think it has to do with love and compassion and relationship and life, just giving birth to life and being connected to nature. Somehow I'm not in touch with that. And so against everybody's advice, I went to Glastonbury and I sat by the well. There's this very special well there. I don't know if you've been. It's called the Chalice Well. And have you been there?
Yes.
It's lovely. And I sat there. I went for a whole week, and I just kept going to this well. And I'm like, I really, really, really want to know the face of the divine. And I don't want to just know it intellectually. I want to feel it. I want to feel the mother, the black face of the mother. And there was a particular day I was meditating, and I'm sure if anybody was looking at me, I looked like I was sitting by the well. But what was happening is that I could smell roses. I could feel a presence. I felt a very strong presence. I got shivers all over. And I realized that this feminine, this divine feminine, was letting herself be known. But it was very subtle. I had to, I felt like I could hear her, but then, I was worried at the time. Am I making things up? And then I thought, well, it doesn't matter if I'm making it up. This is wonderful. And so I started to allow myself to feel this deep presence. And then so for the past 30 years, I've gone back to that spot, and then I've allowed that presence to take me somewhere. And I usually find if you want to feel the presence of the divine feminine, you go to a spot, a sacred place, and then you can get to know that energy. The feminine is like, if you think about Durga for a minute in Hindu mythology, she's riding on the back of a lion and she has 8 arms. And so she's a multitasker. And I think the goddess is a multitasker. So even when I was doing this, I had a young daughter and was working as an editor, and it had all kinds of things going on. But you can still develop your connection to the in world, even while you're doing dishes or changing diapers or whatnot. But so to be really specific.
Sorry, how do you connect when you said a sacred spot, but let's say you're living in the middle of a big city and there is no sacred spot in sight? What do you do?
So I think this is important. When you first feel that kind of presence, I call it true nature. When you really feel that the first time, it's like nectar. It's like honey. So it just fills you up. It's so delicious. But at first, I could only experience it when I was sitting with my eyes closed in a sacred. And so for me, that's what worked. Then I realized over time that I could get up and I could move with the energy. And so at that point, whether I was in London or New York or Paris or wherever, India, I could still feel that presence. But I had to really work on it. And so every morning when I get up in the morning, I would sit in meditation for maybe 15 minutes or so to make sure I was in alignment with it. And then at that point, move forward. So there is a practice, you have to want to enter the world, the mythic imagination. You have to want to meet Merlin. You have to want to meet the cosmic mother. If you really long for that, it shows up somewhere, somehow. And if you can't get to Glastonbury, it can show up right, in your own yard. If you have your feet, now I go out every morning, I put my feet on the earth. I'm in Virginia right now. I put my feet on the earth and I just sing. And I turn in a spiral. You talk about spirals, and the bees will come and the butterflies will come and birds start singing. And okay, I'm attuned. I'm attuned. Here it is. So I'm consciously entering culture of life. I might get caught up in sometime during the day in culture of death, but at least I can notice the difference. I can go, oh wait, what am I doing? I'm really being dualistic here. I'm entering sort of war with someone. Stop, and then go back into this slower. It's a slower way of being. Okay, let me be in touch with my in world. Aha, I'm feeling love. I'm feeling compassion. My mythic imagination on. Okay, let's move forward. So, question for you: have I answered your question?
You were semi-spiralist, so very good. Thank you very much. But I do have, an empowerment radio, it's really all about also helping people that don't have necessarily, the means, the abilities, this environment, or not even, the spiritual beliefs to still tap into that what's hidden inside. And when you talk about this journey inwards, which is so important, when you talk about that we have to stop looking externally and compete and go into this culture of death, but really have to go more from this inner world. And that is then what we share with the outer world. How, if you don't have this connection to the goddess, if you don't really go into the mythology, how can you still find that what certainly is inside all of us, that ability to be in the footsteps of the divine? What would you suggest?
Well, the old bards all knew 250 stories of their people. And the reason they knew those stories before they became ovates, before they became druids, is that they knew people needed stories. That's why the stories are here. And we have Audible and we have books and we have different ways where we can allow ourselves to listen to the story or read a story. Dishes, you can listen to a story. And you don't have to believe anything. You don't have to believe there's a goddess. You don't have to believe. But what you might have to do is let go of your belief systems. You might have to let go of the box that you might have found yourself in. The ego really likes to constrain us, So we might have to let go of a few things and just come like a wondrous child, just like a child listening to a fairy tale, and be curious about it. And then we can do dishes, we can change diapers, we can listen to Merlin, we can listen to the stories of the first woman to achieve the Holy Grail. And then that inspires because we think, oh my goodness, I might be stuck here in this particular difficult situation. But look at Caesar. Caesar is a wonderful example. She was the granddaughter of Noah, who wasn't in the right lineage, and she wasn't invited to board the ark. So what do? Do you die? No, you build your own ark at sail. So, so what I love about the characters is that they figure things out. So if we go into our in world, if we practice within, we have a difficult situation. And there's another character, Blue Eyewith, who's being an adulteress and a murderer. She learns how to forgive. Like her main practice is forgiveness, because she doesn't want to drag around heavy suitcases and cloaks and identities and labels. So she drops all of that off and she chooses again. And so I
Mm.
think each of the characters reminds us that this quality is lovely and empowering, and reminds us that yes, there are lineage for all of us, and we can choose again too. We can choose culture of life. We don't. We're actually ultimately the authors of our own lives. We might not be always in charge of what happens to us, but we're definitely in charge of how we tell the story about it.
So if you would, as a person, choose the culture of life, what would you say on a day-to-day basis you would choose differently? So instead of, let's say, you said rushing through the day and having wars with your neighbors, you would maybe more slow down and forgive or be more compassionate, as an example. But what other examples have you? So funny, because I talked the other day with a client who exactly told me about, his way of living, which was much more about competing and winning and being on top and making sure that the competition gets annihilated. And so that's certainly more that culture of death that you're describing. So what would you say is a culture of a day in a culture of life like?
That's a really good question. So we've been taught sort of through our Roman examples to divide and conquer, and that win lose. We've been taught the win lose model, and I think what we're discovering is win lose doesn't actually work. That the only thing that really works is win win, and that doesn't also mean that we're doormats that we can be walked over. I mean, look at some of the goddesses like Skaya. She can kill someone pretty quickly, so I think that, I mean, we have to defend ourselves at times. But the culture of life, what does that look like? It looks like, let's give a day. You get up in the morning, the sun's rising, and there's a lovely tale about riding on the swan through the night, and you've gone through the night and you've gathered all the pieces of your soul, and you've come back and you're opening your eyes, and it's a miraculous day. We get a day on earth. How amazing that we can be here and to have life. Life is a miracle. It doesn't last that long, so fantastic. We have this particular point in time. We can get up, we can go outside, we can put our feet on the soil, we can thank everything in existence for being here, supporting us. Right? We can sing to the wind, to the birds that fly, to the animals that walk on the earth, to the fish that swim in the water, to the guardians that are with us, and we can attune to that. And that's actually to attune to that, because all of a sudden we're not alone anymore. We have allies. Then, if you have to go out, and I'm quite ambitious myself. I love writing books and winning awards and doing all sorts of things. But when you go forward, I remember going to go do my doctoral thesis, which in England is quite difficult. But when I went in, I was like, I had all of my allies with me, and I knew that they were going to support me and become in being successful with what I needed to do. So what I'm feeling with the culture of life is not who I need to destroy or who I need to stomp over. No, not at all. What I'm feeling is my particular life force, what it is within me that wants to unfurl. I'm like a tree. I'm a seed, and I have a particular blueprint that wants to unfold.
Mm-hmm.
Am I actually unfolding? Am I dreaming with the earth and unfolding perfectly as my own unique being? We're all different. We're all completely different. We wouldn't unfold in the same way. And so obviously you wouldn't let someone hurt that blueprint. That wouldn't be what we would do. But we would do our best to support each other's blueprint so we all together become a beautiful forest. In a forest, the trees support the tree. The forest supports, the ferns and the flowers and everything. So we can live like that. We don't have to. It doesn't help us to be better than or to dominate. How does that help? It doesn't.
Yeah, and I think the challenge for us humans is that we do often, unfortunately, overthink and not necessarily just allow to be. I mean,
Mm.
a tree or a cat or a bird, they certainly have it easier because they do live more in their instinctual truth. There is not necessarily a second guessing. There is not the idea of, well, should I do more? Should I have more? What about them? They are doing better. That's not fair. So we have to also tame our mind. And so that's why I'm wondering, like, these practices that you're describing, this introspection, this journeying into the mythology, which is kind of like shamanic journeying, that this is really connecting you then to those resources that allow you just to be and to unfold versus having to run, strive, plan, and conquer.
It's a different way of being, because the way I call it the P, that's just what I could, the PEA, is when we're in our tight, constricted self and we think we're lost and we think that we have no hope and we think that we're cut adrift, and then there's that moment that happens, and all of a sudden, oh, I'm actually not a P, I'm an essence. I'm connected to essence. I'm actually a pearl. And everything around me is helping me just polish me up so that I can actually become who I am. But it is, again, it's a practice and it's a mindset. If we practice it, and it is very shamanic in a way, where we're going inside, we're finding what empowers us, what our own particular truths. We're not imposing that on anyone else, but we're inviting a discussion. We're inviting an unfoldment, and it's much more powerful. True nature, if you look at this acorn, it's going to grow into an oak tree. It's not going to be a blade of grass. That's what it's going to be. And we're not really so different. We think we are, but if you can really spend time today, maybe go and put your back up against a beautiful tree and just feel it. That tree's been in that spot for a long time, and it knows the soil, it knows the land, it knows the roots, it knows the sky, and it might know more than we do.
Well, I certainly love all the trees around us, and thank you for reminding me to lean against one of them again. But how do people find you? Because this is such a fascinating conversation, and I love your work. So, what if people want to know more about you? Where do they go?
You can go. My website is easy. It's AYN, and there are not too many AYN. Ayn Cates Sullivan or Ayn Cates Sullivan. .com, and people want to go questing, or some people are writing books, or some people are studying legends. All my books are listed too, and you can find my books just about anywhere on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and Facebook, Twitter, and so forth. So just AYN CATES SULLIVAN. And I hope you join Quest and make this shift, allow this wondrous child to come forth. Throw off the P, throw off the suit of armor. Go ahead and throw it off and just see what's there, because you might just find a shining light inside.
That's beautiful. Now we only have like 1 or 2 minutes left. So what I'm wondering is, from your personal experience, when you go maybe into the ego or the overambitious self, what's the easiest way to get yourself back in touch with, let's say, your true nature?
When all of a sudden, I know that I'm out when I become judgmental and self-critical. I immediately know I'm out. Stop, close my eyes. If I can, I take my shoes off and I go stand on the grass. And that's the easiest way for me to look around, to look at the trees, put my back against a tree. The Druids, they were called the Druids because they were the people of the oaks. So if you find a nice oak tree and just put yourself back up against it for a minute, find your strength through the tree. Okay, I'm not cut adrift. I'm not a little boat flying around. I'm actually connected to an amazing world, and I'm part of that wondrous, intelligent being.
And what do you do if you live in a high rise?
I went to Columbia University, so I lived in New York City for a while, and You get, well, what I did when I lived in New York is I became really imaginative. I spent a lot of time in the books, and I read a lot. And but you can also go, you can go to Central Park, and you can also get a little tree and have it in your room. Go get a little ficus tree or a spider plant or something. There are ways to connect. And if you're up high, you can talk to the birds. You can get really, really well acquainted with the air.
So there are always ways for us to connect, reconnect, remember, and like you said, remember that we are the pearl, which I just love as an image, and see life more as this magical unfoldment and this journey that it's supposed to be, and no longer as the war zone or the conquest that we are told it needs to be. Well, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation and time. And is there any little, summary of what you would say you want to leave the listeners with?
I would say it's okay to be a fool. It's okay to be a wondrous child. It's okay to throw off all these things that we've been taught and to look again.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you. And this was it for Empowerment Radio. Quite a mystical and magical show today. Take good care and try to lean at those trees. And remember, goodbye.